So I'm going to be replacing this gate today. As you can see here, it's just dragging on the floor. You can't even barely open it. Pickets are falling off. Everything's just coming apart. So we're going to swap this out with a brand new one. Alright, so now that the gate's off, we start building a new one. We'll start framing it out. First we're going to take the measurements, so stick around so you can see how this turns out. Also taking a quick look here at the side posts, you can see that they're both pretty solid. They're not moving. They don't look to be rotted, so I don't think we would need to replace those. Ordinarily I would replace them, but in this case I think that they're okay to use. So what I measure here, I want to make sure that whatever the measurement is, as an example here at the top, it's 37.5 inches. So I want to make sure that I give myself at least an extra inch in wiggle room, so a ½ inch on each side, and that'll allow the wood to kind of contract and expand over time and not cause it to seize up or get stuck when you try to open it. And when I cut this, I want to put the blade just on the outside of the line here to give myself a true 36.5 inches. And since that one is measured already, all we have to do is just line this up, make our mark, and cut it again. And both pieces will be exactly the same size, still staying to the outside of that line. There we go. And since I just cut these pieces, I want to make sure that they do in fact create the spacing that I want, about a ½ inch on each side, all the way up, all the way down, and they do. So these will be our horizontal pieces, and then we'll put some verticals in on the sides, get those cut. You notice when I went to measure, I measured at the top, in the middle, and at the bottom, because some of these things are not, 99% of the time, they're not straight at all. So we end up with different lengths. So if I just went with one measurement up here, we might fit this way fine, but as soon as we get down to the bottom, it's too tight. So I always take all three measurements, and then I take the shortest measurement and work from that. All right, so the next thing I'm going to be doing is, now that I have the horizontal pieces set to fit properly, I need to figure out how tall those vertical side supports need to be. So I'm just going to do a quick measurement, and I'm going to come up just a little bit, just eyeball it a couple inches or so off the ground. And let's say we want to come up to maybe a couple inches below the top for our frame. So we'll call it 52 inches. So 52 inch high, right, by 36.5 inch wide. So what we're going to have to do now is to get that 52 inch height for those vertical posts. Because they're going to be connected to the horizontal posts, I now have to take the difference. I have to measure these two plus the vertical post to get to my 52 inches. And that's basically a real quick way of how to do that, how to measure that. So then we just want to make sure that as we line these up, that they're nice and square. And you can start with one corner first. And that's looking great. So what I did is I went to Home Depot and I bought these little brackets here, and I'm going to put them on each corner, just kind of centering them, putting a couple nails top and bottom, a couple of screws top and bottom, and that's going to allow me to get this thing sturdy enough to be able to put the cross brace in, and then also to be able to hang it and then put the pickets on it. Ultimately, the pickets are going to be what really hold it together and make it super strong, but this will get us there to that point until we're ready to put the pickets on. And keep in mind too, this entire project for this gate, it uses 3 2x4s and about 10 fence pickets from Home Depot, from Lowe's, whatever it is. And then I got a couple of brackets, and I got some gate hardware here as well. That I'll show you guys how to install, so stick around. Now the screws that I'm using are just 1 5/8 inch wood screws. This is a good length. It's long enough to deeply embed into the wood and really hold on tight, but at the same time not too long to where it's going to go all the way through and poke out the other side. You definitely don't want that. Alright, first one's on, and in case you're wondering, the side that I put the brackets on is the side that we're also going to be putting the fence pickets on. So it'll be on the outside of the gate. You'll never see these brackets on the inside or the outside. So they'll be completely hidden and providing some extra strength, which is really nice. Nice and level, nice and square. So the next step is going to be to actually put in a cross brace. Now the purpose of a cross brace, believe it or not, a lot of people see fence gates and there's usually an angled piece going one direction or the other, and I know that a lot of people don't really think about it, but there's a real good reason to have that angle in there and have that cross brace in there. So what happens is when you put a cross brace in, you always want to put the cross brace in at the side of the gate that has the latch on it that opens and closes. And the reason for that is because what happens is as you open and close that gate, or as that gate stays sitting on its hinges, there's weight on the edge of that gate, and that weight will eventually cause the gate to sag and come down. So by putting a cross brace from that side of the gate, from the latch side of the gate, what you're doing is effectively taking the weight that's coming from the top and you're shoving it back down to the bottom brace or bottom hinge. So it strengthens the gate up quite a bit and prevents it from sagging. So that's why you always see this cross braces, but it's important to know that you can't just put it in any way. You really need to put it in at the side of the gate that opens. That corner, that top corner is the side where you start your brace, and you come back down to the hinge side of the gate on the bottom. So now if you can imagine, like we said, we want the top of this cross brace to be at the hinge side, going down toward the bracket or the hinge side. And so if you can imagine the cross brace being on just like this, but then us picking the gate up as it is and standing it up and putting it on. And that's going to be so we want the cross brace on this side and these brackets on the outside as well. So that's kind of what we're going to do. And what I'm going to do to determine that angle, there's all kinds of ways to do it. You can figure out, mathematically based on this and that and the other thing. It seems to work pretty well for me. What I've done, I don't know if it's right, wrong, I'm not sure, but for me it seems to work pretty well to just line up the wood visually right at the edge here on this corner and right down there at that corner, and then just make marks, you know. So I have my mark where it ends up here on this edge, and then a mark where it ends up here on this edge, and the same here down here. And now what I'll do once I've made those marks is I'll kind of continue those marks across using my square, and then I'll just match the chop saw to align with those marks, with that angle, because they're all very different. The sizes of gates are different. You might have a 45-degree angle on one, you might have a 23.5-degree angle on another. So it always changes by, you know, even just centimeters, inches, half inches make a big difference in the angle cut. So I always just do it this way. It seems to work well for me, and we'll go ahead and get started cutting. So I'll bring these measurements up so now I can see my pen marks, and then what I'm going to do is just connect the dots using my square, and there we go. That's my angle for that side. So I'll do the same thing over here. Just connect the dots, come up, and now I know I'm going right to this corner right here, so I'm just going to go ahead and connect that. And that'll be my angle cut for the top section there. So we'll go ahead and get that cut. Alright, so now we've got our gate. It's framed up, it's ready to be put up, and then have pickets put on it. So basically what I'm going to do is I have to figure out how in the world to hang this thing, but also make sure that it stays level and that it's off the ground. So it's kind of hard to just sit there and hold it like this and then put, you know, so what I recommend doing is taking a scrap piece of 2x4 that you cut off already and just go ahead and stick it under it. And this will give you the distance off the ground you need to get that fence seated, right? To get that fence gate seated. So what I do first is I'm going to install and screw this hinge in first, the top hinge. Once that's all the way screwed down, what I'll do is I'll come back. Actually, I'll just put in the top screw of it, actually, because you can see it's kind of angled. So I'm going to put the top screw in, that way it'll allow it to swivel a little bit. And then what we'll do is once I screw that in, I'm going to turn around, I'm going to remove this piece of wood, get my level out, and we'll make sure that the gate is completely level before we tack one of the bottom screws in. Now once that's happened, you can just go ahead and screw all the rest of them in, and you're good to go. Then as you're doing this too, you want to make sure that you just, I don't know if you can really see it well in the video, but you want to make sure that you're not touching and leaning up against it. So what I'm going to do is actually just come off a little bit, just give a little bit of a distance before I tack that first screw in, and that'll keep, so about a ½ inch or so, something like that. Oops. There. Okay, now we got that first screw in, we got some distance on it, and then what I'm going to do is grab my level and tack in the bottom. Alright, so now we've tacked this initial screw in. We've given ourselves a little bit of distance here between the gate and the post. So, and I've removed the 2x4, extra 2x4 piece here. So it's just freely hanging there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this level on here, make sure that things are nice and level, and then tack this bottom piece in. This is usually a lot easier when you have a second person helping you. Really what you're looking for is just to kind of even up that gap, make sure that you're within tolerance, and there we go. I'll just kind of use my foot to hold it in place. See, we're nice and level. And actually, seeing that we're, yeah, there we go. Actually, I think I'm going to come out just a little bit more. Nice even gap. Opens and closes fine. And we're clear on the ground. That was the biggest thing, and we're nice and level. So next up, we're going to be going ahead and installing, since we have the hinges on, we're going to go ahead and install the gate latch hardware right here to be able to close and open the gate. And then after that, we'll go ahead and throw the pickets on and wrap it up. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and install the gate hardware for the latch. And since this gate needs to open outward, what we're going to do is we're going to install this catch bar here on the inside, and then the latch here on the gate itself. And that way it'll allow it to open and close and come catch that catch on its way in. So what you want to do here is you want to just make sure that this, you can just eyeball it, you just want to make sure that this thing is, this gate bar is just located somewhere probably right about the center of this top horizontal piece here. And then you can go ahead and screw it down, and then we'll install this next. So the next thing that we want to do is go ahead and install this guy to where it sits nice and flush. And basically what you want is, I don't know if you can see in the video, but there's two different options here for putting this, because it's allowed to swivel, right? So it can swivel from the bottom going up, or it can swivel from the top going down. I always do the bottom going up, and the reason for this is because what I do is when I go to put this on to ensure a nice tight fit, basically what I'm doing is I'm gonna let this bottom lip right here just barely push this up. And if I do that, it'll close nice and tight. All right, if I get it off just a little bit, it won't close. It'll just sit there and stay open like that. So you want to just make sure that it's just kind of barely touching it, right? Just kind of pushing up on it just a little bit as it closes, and that's where you want to tack it down. Okay, and we're going to double check to make sure now that I put that on, that it closes properly, and you can see that it does. So next step is going to be putting the fence pickets on the front and capping it, and we'll call it a day. So stick around, we're almost done. All right, so next we're going to go ahead and install these fence pickets. Now, what I like to do is go ahead and go to the side that's lowest to the ground. So in this scenario, this corner edge is closer to the ground than this side. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to line this up, and then I'm going to tack it in. So what you want to do as you're doing this, wherever you start, you want to go ahead and just, you can see here, we don't want any exposed metal showing, anything like that. So what we want to do is just come a little bit in, maybe close that gap just a little bit. It's okay to have a little bit of a hangover off the gate. Make sure it's good and level. Okay, and then you're going to tack it down. Okay. First one's in. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stagger them all. So it's called something similar to like a shadow box fencing, right? Where I'm going to go on top here and then come in go on top, come in. We're going to stagger them. And this ensures that you're using that the pickets line up well. Because oftentimes, if I just put pickets right next to each other, I'm going to end up here having to cut a picket in half to fit. So this way, it looks aesthetically, it's very pleasing. But it also allows you to go ahead and finish that fence off without having to do rip cuts with a table saw or anything like that. And then once we're done with that, I'm going to go ahead with my circular saw and cut the remnants off, cut these dog ears off, and then we'll put a cap across the top and across the bottom. For the next step, we're going to go ahead and cut the remaining dog ears off. Now what I want to do is I want to keep the fence about even with the top of this post right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this off right here with my circular saw. And then we'll put a cap over it so it'll kind of maintain that height. And now you want to be as straight as you possibly can, but it doesn't really matter too much because you're going to cap it going across the top, so you're not going to end up seeing those cut edges anyway. But you still want to try to be as straight as possible. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is put a cap on this fence. So basically what we want to do is get it pretty level here, come to the edge of the fence on this side, and then mark where you want to cut it here. Now for me, because I want to kind of close this gap just a little bit, I'm going to actually come out to a little bit further, maybe about right here. And that's where I'll make my cut. Set my saw back to 0. And then same thing, I want to cut just on the outside of the line. Now I've got a little bit of a gap right here and right here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece of this to sit down in there to help close that gap up so that this front header section, this cap, is unable to bend and move around. All right, so we finished the gate. We capped both the top and the bottom sides, installed and screwed down all of the pickets onto the 2x4 frame. So you can see it's nice and solid. No wonkiness to it at all. Nice, easy open and close. You can see how just nice and smooth that is. And same here. On the close, nice and level, and there you go. That's how you make your own gate. Please feel free to like and subscribe the channel if you enjoyed the content. Also, feel free to leave me a comment below if you have any suggestions or ideas, or if there's anything that you'd like to see in terms of a project. Would really appreciate it. Thank you for watching.